Well, hello, this is Vincent Green, and we're going to continue looking at the first lesson, lesson number 1, in our New Testament Greek grammar textbook. The author of this textbook is Machen. As we began last time, looking at lesson 1 in the previous video, I walked through the alphabet with you. Everything from alpha all the way to omega, first letter and the last letter and everything in between. And I told you that you needed to learn the small letters, the name of the letter, and the pronunciation value. And I gave you showed you a way to do that. There was an image that I used as a background. I'm going to use it again today so I can draw letters. And as you draw the letters, when you draw the alpha, the beta, gamma, when you draw those letters, say to yourself, alpha, A as in father, beta, B, B, gamma, G as in got. So you want to say that to yourself and be able to also know the order of the letters. Everything from alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and so on, all the way down to the omega. And remember, the sigma has one form if it's at the beginning of a word or in the middle of the word if that letter shows up. But if this letter shows up at the end of the word, it looks like this. It's the same pronunciation value. It's actually the same letter. It just has a different look to it. And so you just really have to memorize the letters. And so the best way to do that is by drawing them. And I showed you how to do that. I walked through all of that. So if you've done that and you feel comfortable, now you're starting this video, you have to we have to take you into some other matters related to the alphabet, related to the letters, just so you get an awareness of some other things that take place in regards to the Greek language. So we walked through number 2. I've already showed you that with walking through the letters in our last video. What I want to start with is what is in number 3 here and some number 3 in lesson 1. You have to learn the differences here. And let me bring up my drawing program so I can kind of show you this. I'll draw on the screen here. So you have to think about this when you're thinking of the letters. All the letters, there's 2 different types of letters. There's consonants, C-O-N. I'm just going to say consonants, and then there's vowels. Consonants and vowels. The vowels is what is right here. These are all of the vowels. Now, every language pretty much has that, has consonants in it and vowels, okay? So you have to be aware of that. The best way to learn the difference is learn the vowels. So everything that is not a vowel would represent a consonant. So beta is a consonant. Gamma is a consonant. Delta is a consonant. If it doesn't show up in this list right here, it is a consonant. Okay? Not a vowel. So you need to be aware of that. So you can see here that there's short vowels and there's long vowels. And this is regarding pronunciation. And you remember me telling you that really at the end of the day, pronunciation is not going to be that important. And it's not in one sense of the word. It's not really going to be that important in terms of looking at these words and being able to know how to translate them. But even though you don't have to master this, it's best to learn this. So it's best to learn the short vowels and the long vowels. Now what you notice is alpha is a short vowel, but it can also be a long vowel. Let's look down here. The iota can function as short or long. Upsilon can function short or long. So when we start seeing Greek words where we realize that these letters can look exactly the same, but they could be either short or long. Now, how do you determine which way they're being used? Well, there's rules that govern all of that, and we'll figure that out as we go. But the point I want you to see is that alpha, iota, upsilon are vowels. Now, notice this. This is the difference here. These are the ones that are a little bit unique. So you got epsilon and omicron. Epsilon and omicron, they are short vowels. Eta and omega are long vowels. But the epsilon corresponds to the eta. The omicron corresponds to the omega. Epsilon corresponds to eta. So if it's eta, it's always going to be short. If it's epsilon. If it's epsilon, it's always going to be short. If it's eta, it's always going to be long. If it's omicron, it's always going to be short. If it's omega, it's always going to be a long vowel. So here it's nice that you have distinctions, right? You can easily distinguish between short and long vowels because you know these two are always short, these two are always long. But in these other cases, it's not as clear, right? Because the same letter can be used in either way. So you just want to note that moving forward. But you need to memorize those vowels. You want to memorize this chart right here. This is what you want to memorize. You want to put this into your memory, be able to draw that out for yourself. What you want to do is write the word short, write the word long, and then go down the line and mark those out. And on some of the worksheets, you'll see some worksheets, a worksheet, and maybe a quiz. You'll see that in the, or I think it's more of a maybe a couple of different quizzes I have. You'll see you get an opportunity to work through that. If I give you a quiz, it's in the video description box below the video, then I want you to try to complete that without looking at anything, without looking at your textbook. See how much of that you can do apart from the textbook. Then I also provide answer keys, the answer key for the different quizzes and worksheets. So you'll be able to see that. You can look at it, but look at it after, okay? Try to do the work because it's a way to test if you're learning the material, okay? The goal here is to try to learn Greek so you can read the Greek New Testament, so that you can read and translate. And so I want you to be able to do your best on it. But that was one of the things I needed to show you about vowels and consonants. So if it's a consonant, it's not on the screen, right? Only what's on the screen is what you see there, and those are the vowels. You learn the vowels, and you know that everything else that's not there, the other letters, function as consonants. So it will be noted that alpha, iota, upsilon can either be long or short. I was describing that already. The long alpha and the long upsilon are pronounced very much like the corresponding short letters, except that the sound is held longer. The short iota is pronounced like the letter I in pit, and the long iota like E in feet. So that's why when we had the pronunciation up here, we had both of them listed, and they seemed to sound two different ways, pit and feet. And it's because the iota can be short or a long vowel. So that's how you have to understand this. That's why it was listed that way. Now, epsilon is always short. Eta is the long of it. Omicron is always short. Omega is the long of it. So this clear distinction in appearance between the long and the short, letter E and the letter O, you could say, makes the matter of quantity very much easier than in Greek than it is if you know Latin. The iota and the upsilon are called close vowels, and the other ones are called open vowels. You say, what's that about? This whole thing of closed vowels and open vowels, the difference is it's how you make the sound of the letter with your mouth. And so don't worry, it's a pronunciation thing. It's how you would, when you're making, he's trying to describe how when they sounded those letters, when they spoke them, the people of the first century and before that, who who spoke Koine Greek, those who spoke this language originally, um, how open was their mouth? When it talks about closed vowels, that means their mouth is more, their lips are more close together, and when they're open, they're more open. They're separated from each other, the top lip from the bottom lip. So that's all he's talking about there. So you just want to be aware. The main thing is you want to be aware of the chart. You want to be aware of these vowels. You want to be aware if they're short or if they're long, and be able to make that distinction for yourself. Now, number 4, we're going to talk about what's called a diphthong. A diphthong. Now, a diphthong is a combination of two vowels, but it's a single syllable. Okay? Two vowels in a single syllable. So I'm going to come back to this. But what I want to do is get back into my drawing program, and I'm going to talk about syllables just for a minute. So if you have a word, let's just have a word. Well, let me find a good one. Let's see. Okay, if I do store. Okay, let me just do this one. This is an English word, ball. B-A-L-L. When you say that word, how many syllables does it have? It only has one syllable. Okay? If you say, I'm trying to think of a good word. Okay, let's do this word. Testament. T-E-S-T. Testament. Like Old Testament, New Testament. Okay? So, when I start from the left, and a syllable, the way you know a syllable is every syllable has to have in it, that's the equal sign, sorry, has to have in it either a consonant, it has to have a consonant, but it has to have a vowel. A syllable always has to have one vowel. It can have a consonant vowel, or a consonant vowel consonant, or it could be just a vowel by itself. But every syllable has at least one vowel in it, okay? Vowel letter. So when we look here, if I start here, this is a consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, right? So what I do is I have to make sure that it has, wherever there's a syllable, there's always a vowel. And it could be one of these kinds of combinations. Consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant. Or it could be vowel by itself. You cannot have a syllable that has like consonant, consonant. That's not a syllable. Consonant, consonant's a consonant, not a syllable. Every syllable has to have a vowel somewhere in it. So when I look, I see 3 vowels. If I have 3 vowels, guess how many syllables I have? 3 syllables. That's normally how this goes. So the way I do it is, though, you would say, well, test, te, ste, mint. But that's not how it normally is. It's test. So here's my first syllable, and I draw a line for my first syllable. Usually when you have 2 consonants together, unless they appear at the end of the word, this is just English grammar. You would break the consonants and put it with the vowel. So there's my first syllable, a CVC setup there. Here, since I only got 1 consonant, not 2 together, I would say testa, and then start this one with, see, there's a CV, and then I have testament. So it's definitely 3 syllables because there's 3 vowels. See that? But since there's 2 consonants at the end, I can't have it be by itself. A consonant by itself is not a syllable. So I have to put this all together. So it's a CVCC kind of construction. So there's my vowel, there's my vowel, there's my vowel. And when you go to like an English dictionary, when they show you the word and then they show you the breakdown of how to pronounce the word, they always put little dashes in between. So it looks something like this. You would find it like this: T E S dash T A dash M E N T. Why are these dashes? Because what it's doing, it's breaking up that syllable number 1, syllable number 2, syllable number 3. Okay? So this is just basic syllable division. And every word has at least 1 syllable. Sometimes they have 2 syllables, sometimes they have 3 syllables. There are words that have 4. Because it's depending on how long the word is and how many letters it makes to take to do that. Here's another one. The word indicative, I-N-D-I-C-A-T-I. That's really technically a letter I-V-E. So here's my vowel. There's my vowel. There's a vowel. There's a vowel. So N, 2 consonants, so I break the consonants. N, D, because there's a consonant vowel, so there's not 2 consonants to break up. Indicative. So this is syllable 1, syllable 2, syllable 3, syllable number 4. Again, I'm just using English words right now to show you syllables, okay? So you just have to know how syllables are formed. So this is actually, you can have a CV combination, a CVC combination, CVCC combination. You can have a vowel by itself. You can actually have a vowel consonant combination. Every syllable has what? A vowel. So here is a vowel consonant, right? This is consonant vowel. This is consonant vowel. This is consonant vowel consonant. So indicative. And so this is an interesting thing, because the way it's working is all of this is together. This is like a blended E. It's a special kind of rule. So where there's 2 vowels in 1 syllable, but they don't show up together. You can normally in English you can't have 2 vowels together. If you have 2 vowels together, that's going to make a separate syllable. But I wanted you to get at least the idea of writing, of doing a syllable. So let me get out of here again, and I'm going to go back to diphthongs, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So quit the screen draw. So a diphthong is a combination of 2 vowels in a single syllable. I told you just now that if you have 2 vowels together in English, they don't really go together. That one would be a part of 1 syllable, the other one would be a part of another syllable. Well, in Greek, that changes. In Greek, you can have what's called a diphthong, which is 2 vowels that are functioning in a single syllable, where the second letter of the diphthong is always a closed vowel, and the first letter is always an open vowel. So that means that you only have certain possibilities. And these are always vowels, okay? You can't have diphthongs are not related to the consonants. They're related to the vowels. So the vowels is this chart here. So you can only make diphthongs with combinations of these vowels. So um, open vowels are everything but iota and upsilon. So there's your open vowels: alpha, iota, omega, alpha, eta, or I'm sorry, omicron, alpha, eta, omega, alpha, epsilon, omicron. And then your iota and your upsilon are these, remember the long open and closed? The reason he gave you that is not just for the sake of pronunciation. It's because there's only so many possible combinations of diphthongs. And diphthongs are combinations of where two vowels show up in a single syllable. So here's the common ones: alpha iota, epsilon iota, omicron iota. Okay? And then alpha upsilon, epsilon upsilon, omicron upsilon. Notice the iota and the upsilon are closed vowels. So it's always an open vowel, then a closed vowel. It's that combination. You have the first letter is always an open vowel, except in this case, you have an upsilon iota. You can have that. That is a diphthong that can show up. But here are the common ones. Okay? And these first 6 are the more common ones. And then you can have that one. Now, you can have also eta, upsilon, and omicron upsilon. They're very rare, though. So you just have to be aware that sometimes you can have letters or you can have words in Greek that have these diphthongs. The point of the diphthong is that it's a single syllable and it's pronounced like a separate letter. So when you see the alpha iota, you don't have to combine the way you would say the words, you pronounce the words or pronounce the letters, the way you would pronounce the letters. You don't have to combine that. You pronounce it like the AI in aisle. So it has its own pronunciation value. You just have to embrace the weirdness of Greek, okay? I know this is weird looking. If you're an English speaker, you don't think like this. You may have a different foreign language, another language that you speak. Your home language may not be English, and you're like, we never do anything like this. This is just the way Greek is. You have to embrace the weirdness of it and work with it. This is how they spoke. So if it's alpha iota, it's pronounced like alpha iota in aisle. Epsilon iota, like the long A in fate. So epsilon iota and the eta by itself have really the same pronunciation value. Omicron iota is like OI in oil. Alpha upsilon is like the OW in the word cow. Epsilon upsilon is pronounced like the EU in feud. Feud, like family feud. Omicron upsilon is pronounced like the two O's together in the word food. And upsilon iota is pronounced like two E's together in the word queen, or two letters E in the word queen. So you just have to be aware of this. You're gonna run into diphthongs all the time. Okay, you're gonna run into diphthongs all the time. There's no way around it, and you just want to be aware of it. That you're going to see these diphthongs, and so you just want to be aware of it. Now, sometimes when you have an iota, it unites with a long vowel, alpha, eta, or omicron. Omicron, omega. I keep getting these confused. Alpha, eta, or omega to form one sound. the iota is written under the other letter instead of after it. So it's called an iota subscript. So when you have alpha iota, epsilon iota, it can look like that. Sometimes it looks like this. Well, it would be alpha, it would be eta, and it would be omega, because here that one's acting as a short vowel, that one's acting as a short vowel, but this one's acting as a long vowel. And remember, the alpha can be short or long. Eta is always long. Omega's always long. So when you have this iota subscript, it has no effect whatever upon the pronunciation. If you have an alpha with an iota subscript, see that little iota subscript there? Let me see if I can blow this up just a little bit more for you. If you have the alpha, you see that little alpha with the iota subscript, eta with the iota subscript, omega with the iota subscript. See that little thing like that, that little notation right there? That's the iota subscript. It's technically the combination of eta, iota as a diphthong, but it's visually laid out like that. When you see that, alpha with an iota subscript is pronounced just like a long alpha. Eta is like an eta. Omega is like omega. The sound doesn't change in those combinations. Okay, here they do. In the iota subscript version of it, they don't. So again, I know all this seems new. You got to start somewhere. But as we go through Greek, you're going to see diphthongs all the time. You're going to see diphthongs all the time, and it's going to become obvious. It's going to become easy to spot. But let me give you a couple of words. Go back to my document here, and then bring up my program again. So here's a word that you would see it. We'll eventually get to this word. Don't worry about it right now, knowing what it means. But lambda, upsilon, iota, not iota, I'm sorry, epsilon. That's upsilon, epsilon, iota, sigma. So lambda, upsilon, epsilon, iota, sigma. Do you notice this right here? There's the diphthong. And I would divide this into two syllables. This would be syllable number one, lu, because there's a vowel. But remember, here's my consonant. This is my consonant. Consonant vowel is the first word. But notice this. The diphthong is two vowels put together in one syllable. So I'm going to write the letter D there. So we have a diphthong consonant, which is like vowel, vowel, consonant, but a special case of that called the diphthong. That's one of them. Here's another word that it's just very similar. Still the lu, lambda, upsilon, and then lu, epsilon, iota. No sigma this time. So again, there's your consonant vowel, and this is your vowel, which is technically your diphthong, as the second syllable. It's a two-syllable word. So you see what I'm talking about in that regard. So you just want to be aware of this. that diphthongs will show up. They show up when they need to show up. Let me give you one more. Here is, I'll do a couple more, but here's another one. So this is alpha, nu, theta, rho, and then we got p, that's the pi. Then we have omicron. Sorry, omega. I keep getting these the names confusing. Sorry. With an iota subscript underneath. That's a Greek word. And I'm sorry again. Let me write it one more time. I think I left the letter out. I'm trying to write this from memory. And sometimes my memory doesn't do the best. Anthro, alpha, nu, theta, rho, I forgot that omega right there. With an iota subscript. Anthropo. Anthropo. Here's another one of the same word but a different ending. Anthro. So I'm going to write this. So this is on, throw, po. Okay? Vowel, consonant, 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 vowel, on, throw. So I had to divide. There's 3 consonants, so I had to take one and put it with my vowel. The other 2 stay together. Anthropo. That would be a consonant, and there's the diphthong. Here is on, throw, poos. So here we have my vowel, consonant, 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 vowel. Here we have consonant, consonant, but I got 2 vowels, but that's the diphthong. So these are the 3 different syllables. But notice, here is my diphthong. That's with the iota subscript. This is the diphthong with omicron, upsilon. So you're going to see these diphthongs. They're going to show up. You're going to see them at different times, different words, and you want to be aware of that. Okay? Now let's go to number 5. A vowel or diphthong at the beginning of a word always has a breathing mark. The breathing stands over a vowel. And in the case of a diphthong, it stands over the second of the 2 component vowels. So let me blow this up so I want you to be able to see this. I'll get this a little bit larger again. So notice you have 2 kinds of breathings. Rough breathing, which look at that little mark, how it's going backwards. It indicates that an H sound is to be pronounced before the initial vowel or diphthong. The smooth breathing, which is like an apostrophe. It looks like this one's like a backwards apostrophe. This is the apostrophe an English apostrophe in the way that you would see it, normally think of it, indicates that no such H sound is to be produced. So thus, you see this letter here, or this word here, right there? It's epsilon nu. It has the smooth breathing. That's the word in. In. And it's to pronounce like in, just like you would think. But when you see the same word, look, the same two letters, technically not the same word, sorry. It's the same two letters, but not the same word. Notice the breathing mark is different. You add that, I double clicked. When you add that rough breathing, it adds an H sound. So it is to be pronounced like hen. So in, hen. Technically, two different words. We have the diphthong. Here's the diphthong. Omicron, upsilon with the smooth breathing. It is to be pronounced just like ooh, ooh, just like you would think it would be pronounced. The smooth breathing adds no pronunciation value to it. But if we have upsilon, omicron, upsilon with the rough breathing, and notice the rough breathing or the smooth breathing, when you have a diphthong, it shows up over the second letter, not the first letter. Okay? Notice that it's showing up over the second letter. It is to be pronounced who. Who. So you got this rough breathing and smooth breathing. Okay? Now there are 3 accent marks. And we're going to talk more about accents in lesson number 2. Lesson number 2, I'm going to go through everything regarding accents. But there's accent marks. This one is called the grave. Or, I'm sorry, it's called the acute. The acute. This one is the circumflex. This one is the grave. So the acute is angled this way, has this picture to it. The circumflex is like the little, if you look on your keyboard on your computer, it's usually the key that's below the escape button. It's right to the left of the number 1 numeral key on the keypad and on the keyboard, and you find the circumflex, and that's then you actually find like a grave accent. And if you go to your return key or enter key, look to the left of that, you'll see like the, well, that's really like an apostrophe, but it looks like the acute accent. But you have these 3 accent marks. These accents, like breathing, stand over the vowels. They always are over vowels, not consonants. And in the case of a diphthong, it would stand over the second one. When a breathing and an accent mark stand over the same vowel, the breathing comes first, except if it's in the case of the circumflex accent, it'll stand over the breathing. So look at this. This is the word oiku, oiku. Notice it's a diphthong here, omicron, iota. Notice it has the smooth breathing with the acute accent. Acute is what that one is. So breathing comes first, then the accent. However, when you have the circumflex accent, notice what you have. Same letters and technically the same word, but it has the smooth breathing. But notice the circumflex accent stands over it. So the use of accents and how that works. That's what we're going to study about in lesson 2. Just know that wherever you see the accent mark, that adds the stress in terms of the pronunciation. Which syllable gets the stress? Which syllable in the word has the pronunciation stress on it? And we'll talk again more about accent marks in lesson number 2. That lesson number 2 is all about accents. And we're going to go through that. You just need to be aware of them, okay? One more thing, one more thing to look at. There are 4 marks of punctuation. The comma, which looks like the English comma. The period, which looks like an English period, both written on the line and corresponding to the comma and the period in English, okay? But the colon, which the colon is 2 dots for us, right? That's how we do it in English. A dot a dot here and a dot here, right? So let me just bring up my screen drawing program again. So a colon, for us, a colon would look like this. We would say, I'm just going to put it after, let's say this is not the end of a sentence, but I just want to show you what it looks like. Colon looks like this, right? In English. This would be a semicolon, right? That's a semicolon in English. Well, the colon for Greek looks like this. So this in English looks like this in Greek. 1 dot instead of 2. And it's called a raised dot because it's not, here's the line. Remember, like when you're drawing, when you're writing letters, you write at the bottom, the bottom of the line. Some letters in Greek go below the line, but some are half the space, right? You got that little, remember that worksheet or what I've been showing you in terms of drawing letters? So this raised dot is raised from the bottom of the line. The period marker is on the line. So is the comma, which you can't see because of that. Comma is on the line. So comma is like right here. You draw a comma like that. Raised dot because it's raised from the line. And so this one raised dot equals it functions as what the English colon functions as. Okay? And it really functions like like that. The question mark, so in English we have the question mark is like this, right? In Spanish, I think is it like upside down in Spanish? But in English, it's like this. That's the question mark. Well, what does that look like? That looks like the English semicolon. But that's not. In Greek, that's a question mark. That's a question mark. So you just have to be aware of that. You want to kind of learn these. And let me just give you a little show here of what you're looking at when it comes to the New Testament. So let me just, this is where it says in Matthew 1, David begot or was the father of Solomon from the one who was the wife of Uriah. So that's from Bathsheba. So notice we have capital letters because they're the names of people. But notice there is grave accent, acute accent, rough or smooth breathing, grave accent, circumflex accent, smooth breathing, circumflex, smooth breathing. There's a diphthong. It shows up on the second diphthong. There's an acute accent mark. Let me get some words down here. Here you have circumflex, grave. You got the circumflex with, when you have a capital letter used, the smooth breathing or the rough breathing shows up to the left of the word. Otherwise, it's above it. Remember the word in that we saw in the textbook? There's that. There's an acute accent. There's the circumflex accent. Let me see if I can get to some places where there's no proper names. Here we go. Here we have the rough breathing. So that would be pronounced who with the circumflex above it. Then we have a grave, acute, smooth breathing, circumflex accent, iota subscript, grave accent, smooth breathing. Let me tell you something. About every single word in the Greek New Testament has some kind of accent mark. either the grave, the acute, or the circumflex. Not all of them have breathing marks. The only way they have breathing marks is the word itself has to begin with a vowel or a diphthong. Like, here, look, here's a word that begins with the letter beta. There's no smooth breathing, there's no rough breathing. But notice, here is a word that begins with alpha upsilon, which is a diphthong, and so it's over the second one. Since this word begins with a vowel, or a combination of vowels known as a diphthong, there's where the smooth breathing is. Here is a word that has a vowel to begin it, so it has to have a smooth or rough breathing. And that one's the rough breathing. Here is a word that begins with the same letter beta, no breathing mark. Here is the word pneumati, which means spirit. It's the word for spirit. Hagio means Holy Spirit. So, but no, it's a consonant, so there's no smooth or rough breathing. However, every word, no matter if it starts with a vowel or not, every word has an either acute, grave, or circumflex. There are just a few letters that have no accent mark. Just a few. And the accent mark tells you where the stress of the pronunciation is. So all that tells you, okay? There's really nothing significant exegetically about this. But I just want you to be aware of what you're looking at. When you look at a Greek New Testament, which that's what we're looking at here, and this is Matthew 3. Let me get to an epistle. Ephesians 1, to show you this. So when you see an epistle, there's a word without a vowel, so there's no smooth or rough breathing. Remember, the word has to begin with a vowel. This one does begin with a vowel, smooth breathing. This begins with a vowel, rough breathing. This begins with a vowel, smooth breathing. This begins with a diphthong. So the smooth breathing is over the second letter, because in a diphthong, these are two vowel letters put together to form one syllable, right? They're in one syllable. Here's a word that has no smooth or rough breathing. Now, let's look at pronunciation marks here. Okay? Now, see if I can, I'm going to go to Romans 6. I think Romans 6 is the best place to go to show you this. So, remember this one here? The semicolon? What is that? The semicolon is the question mark. So, what do we say? Remember that question right there at the very beginning of chapter 6 in Romans. Paul is saying, what do we say? Question mark. Can we sin so that grace may abound? Question mark. May it never be. Notice at the end of verse 2, another question mark. At the end of verse 3, another question mark. So you see the question marks here? Notice this. You see what that is? That's not the period. Period is on the same line. This one, there's the line. So that's the raised dot. So what's the raised dot? The raised dot is like the English colon. So now I'm using a version of the Greek New Testament called by Logos, and it has some other symbols in here that are not really in a Greek New Testament. So you just have to be aware of that. I think I can show you, there is a Greek New Testament that's available online, and let's see if I can access it. And I'll have to like put a link in there for you. So this is the Nestle Land 28th edition, which now this is a German website. So this is the word for Matthew in German, but this is all Greek here. So let's see if I can. Let me see if I can. So Romans chapter 6. Then blow it up again. It makes it easier to deal with. So here is the same, and so you only, this is the better view for you, and So this is an interactive, free version of the Greek New Testament. You don't have to go buy the books that are expensive. And you'll see the accent marks, you'll see the smooth breathings, you'll see the rough breathings. There's a rough breathing with an acute accent, rough breathing, acute accent. And so here's a word. Let me blow it up a little bit more. This is a word. It's only got one letter in it, and that one letter is a vowel. And so you got this one here. Notice it's just one vowel, so it has acute or a grave accent with a smooth breathing. And I thought I saw, here's one. This one, though, doesn't have an accent mark. Why is that? We'll learn that later, but there are some few words, like I said, that don't have an accent mark. But this is a vowel. This is the eta vowel, so it does have a rough breathing. So you just have to be aware of these. So I'll put in a link to this Greek New Testament so you can look around at it. And we're not going to be able to translate anything at this point, I don't think. But you can at least look at it and for yourself. And it's online. And you can, again, all the words are in German, at least for the book titles. So you have to kind of, let me even get it down here a little bit more. So you have to, like that's 1 Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and then 1 Peter, 2 Peter, and then Offenbarung. That's the book of Revelation. So 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, Jude. So you just click for the book, and then you can look up the different translations of it. So you just want to be aware of that's available to you. But I'm looking at this, but these like notations in blue, that's because of the Bible software program that I'm using. So you want to be aware of this. Take it back down. Now the exercises is what you've been working on. So continue to write the letters, draw the letters for yourself, say what the letters are, talk about the letters to yourself, the order, keep going back through that, but also add in understanding about pronunciations, understanding about accents. In the next lesson, we're going to really dig deep into the different accents. Where do accents show up on the words? We're going to talk about all of that. And make sure you're familiar with these diphthongs because they're remember the combination, special combination of two vowels that show up in a single syllable. And then you have all of these, just the regular vowels. So everything from number 3 through number 7 here is kind of what I'm focusing on in this video. But work through that. That'll take us through lesson 1. The next video, I'll start lesson 2. Don't know if lesson 2 will be one video. It could be 2 videos. But I'm going to try to explain in detail how to work through the accent system. Again, the more you understand this, even though you say, well, wait, I just want to translate. I just want to translate from the Greek to the English or Greek to whatever my language is. I just want to work through that. You have to get a handle on this stuff first so that you can understand things coming down that are, when we get to lesson 3, that's when we begin to translate. But if you know these things first, they're not just pedantic information, meaningless. This stuff does affect your understanding of the language. That's why it's best to take about 30 minutes a day and just focus on working through this. And the way I'm designing this series is you can work on it slowly or as quickly as you want. And you can go at your own pace. So anyway, hopefully all of this is helpful to you. So let me pray for us, okay? Dear Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity to look at the Greek language and understand about different markings, the rough breathing, smooth breathing, the vowels, the diphthongs, the kind of the punctuation markings that show up. Help us to understand all of this and be able to understand what we're looking at so that as we get to the place where we do start translating, that we can understand what we're dealing with, what we can begin to understand the language and how the language is formed and how we translate it into our language, in a language that we can understand so that we can interpret the New Testament correctly. Lord, I give you thanks in all things. In Jesus' name, amen. So take care, everyone, and I will work on lesson 2 soon and get that video up. But this will give you enough to work on for lesson 1 and work through it. If you got any questions, you can always leave a comment below, and I'll see the comments and I can respond. Okay? Take care. We'll see you in the next video.